This isn't a ghost story. This is America, present tense, out past the polished welcome centers and postcard viewpoints. There are roads that end in silence. Town limits no longer printed on tourist maps. And sidewalks split by fires that never went out. The America you know is interstate glare, Broadway marquees, and the Hollywood sign. But there's another map of the United States, drawn in ash, salt, rust, and memory. Here, a once booming mining camp in Nevada stands frozen mid-breath, its bank vault open to the desert wind. In Pennsylvania, seams of coal burn beneath empty front yards, a decades-long reminder that the ground can betray you. In the high country of Montana, hotel ledgers still sit on wooden desks, names inked in a hand that never returned. Some communities were abandoned by economics. Others were quietly erased by contamination, secrecy, or the needs of a larger story the nation wanted to tell. Why did these places vanish from the official narrative? Who decides what gets remembered? And what gets paved over? If prosperity is the myth on the billboard, what truths live in the blank space beyond it? In the next 25 minutes, we'll step off the bright highways and onto forgotten main streets to uncover 10 hidden American communities the world rarely sees. We'll follow paper trails, oral histories, and the scars on the land itself to understand how a town is born, how it breaks, and how it lingers. Stay to the end for a place so controversial it was effectively wiped from the map. And for the lesson all these towns keep repeating: the past is never past. It's just quieter than we remember. The story of hidden American towns is not a single oddity. It is the result of centuries of boom and bust, war and recovery, discovery and erasure. In the 19th century, the gold rush drew tens of thousands westward, building entire communities in months. By the early 20th century, coal towns dotted Pennsylvania and West Virginia, their populations swelling with the promise of work. Yet today, more than 3.800 ghost towns are recorded across the United States, testaments to the fragility of industry and the brutality of decline. Some were left empty when the mines closed and the investors fled. Others were wiped away by disasters, either natural or man-made. Centralia, Pennsylvania, saw its population shrink from more than 1,000 residents in 1960 to fewer than 10 today. All because of a coal seam fire that still burns underground. Times Beach, Missouri, was evacuated entirely in the 1980s after dioxin contamination poisoned its soil. Whole communities, gone not just from the landscape but from the narrative the nation tells about itself. The erasure was not always accidental. During World War II, Oak Ridge in Tennessee was constructed as a secret city, hidden even from maps, to house the Manhattan Project. The government censored photos, controlled mail, and kept thousands of residents in a place the outside world was not allowed to acknowledge. These towns remind us that what appears on the map of America is always a selective truth. So when we ask, why does America have so many hidden communities? The answer is layered. It is about profit and loss, but also secrecy, fear, and sometimes shame. If prosperity builds the monuments we celebrate, what do we do with the ruins we'd rather forget? Once, Bodie was the embodiment of the gold rush dream. By the late 1870s, this mining town boasted more than 10,000 residents, 65 saloons, and a reputation so wild that one child reportedly prayed, "Goodbye God, we're going to Bodie." It was chaos wrapped in gold dust. Today, Bodie stands frozen in time. Houses are left exactly as they were abandoned, plates still on the table, curtains dissolving in the desert sun, schoolbooks scattered on wooden desks. The California government eventually declared it a state historic park, preserved in arrested decay. Walking through its empty streets feels like trespassing in someone else's unfinished sentence. What destroyed Bodie wasn't one fire or disaster, but the cruel math of the mining industry. By the 1940s, the gold was gone, the boom collapsed, and families drifted away, leaving only echoes behind. Visitors now outnumber long-gone residents 100 to 1, turning the ghost town into a museum of broken promises. Shocking detail. At its peak, Bodie had one murder every single day. Lawlessness was so rampant that even the cemetery couldn't keep up. If Bodie reveals how quickly greed can vanish into dust, the next town shows something darker. What happens when an entire community walks away and leaves not just buildings, but whole lives, intact, hidden deep in the Garnet mountain range? This little town once echoed with the clang of pickaxes and the laughter of miners' children. Founded in the 1890s during Montana's gold fever, Garnet grew into a bustling community of around 1,000 people, with general stores, hotels, and saloons stacked along its wooden boardwalks. It wasn't just a mining camp, it was a dream of permanence in the middle of the wilderness. But by the time World War I ended, the veins of gold had dried up. Families packed their wagons, chasing better prospects elsewhere. What makes Garnet so chilling today is how much remains. Wallpaper peeling from bedroom walls, dusty bottles lined neatly on shelves, pianos sitting silently in collapsed parlors. Step inside, and it feels like the owners just walked out yesterday, never to return. Unlike many ghost towns stripped bare by scavengers, Garnet was remote enough to be left untouched. That eerie preservation makes it one of the most authentic glimpses into late 19th century frontier life. It's as if the town itself is waiting for its citizens to come back, holding its breath in the thin mountain air. Shocking detail. Local rangers report strange whispers and footsteps at night, fueling rumors that Garnet is one of the most haunted places in the American West. If Garnet is a preserved snapshot of lives abandoned, the next stop takes us to Nevada, where ambition once built a city so quickly, and so recklessly, that it collapsed almost as soon as it began. At the dawn of the 20th century, rhyolite was hyped as the next San Francisco. Gold discovered in 1904 lured thousands into the Nevada desert. And within just a few years the town boasted electricity, running water, a hospital, a stock exchange, and even an opera house. Investors called it the crown jewel of the desert. But the dream burned out almost as quickly as it ignited. By 1911, the mines were empty, the banks had failed, and people fled faster than they had arrived. The grand buildings, like the three-story Cook Bank, stood hollow against the sand, their windows shattered, their walls collapsing under desert winds. Today, rhyolite's most famous landmark is the skeletal frame of that once majestic bank. Standing like a cruel joke about boomtown ambition, artists have since turned parts of the ghost town into surreal installations, ghostly white statues, a decaying bottle house, and sculptures that make the desert look more like a dystopian art park than a former gold hub. Tourists come for the spectacle, but what they're really seeing is the speed at which greed can build a city and greed can kill it. Shocking detail. In its prime, rhyolite's population hit 8,000, but within 5 years, it had dropped to nearly zero. A full city vanished almost overnight. If rhyolite is a warning about overhyped dreams, our next stop in Alabama tells a different story. A capital city once filled with political power, now drowned in mud and memory. Before Birmingham or Montgomery rose to prominence, Cahaba held the title of Alabama's first permanent capital. Founded in 1819 at the confluence of the Alabama and Cahaba rivers, it was designed as a symbol of the young state's ambition. Mansions lined its boulevards, politicians debated in its halls, and riverboats carried commerce right to its doorstep. For a brief moment, Cahaba was the beating heart of Alabama. But geography betrayed it. The same rivers that brought prosperity also delivered relentless floods. After a particularly devastating flood in 1865, most residents abandoned the city. The Civil War had already scarred the town, with Cahaba serving as the site of a Confederate prison camp notorious for disease and suffering. By the end of the 19th century, the once proud capital had dissolved into farmland, its grand structures left to rot in the swamps. Today, Cahaba is an archaeological park. Ghostly ruins of brick chimneys and graveyards poke through the undergrowth, silent reminders of a place that literally sank into the mud of history. Locals whisper of strange lights near the old cemetery and ghostly apparitions along the riverbank, reinforcing its legend as one of the most haunted sites in the South. Shocking detail. Inmates at the Cahaba prison camp were crammed 3,000 strong into a space built for 500. With death rates among the worst of any Civil War facility. If Cahaba shows how nature can erase even a capital city, the next town demonstrates something just as haunting. What happens when a community shrinks but stubbornly refuses to die? Tucked into the New River Gorge, Thurmond was once the coal capital of Appalachia. In the early 1900s, it was so prosperous that its banks handled more money than any other town in the state. Trains loaded with coal rumbled through day and night. Hotels brimmed with travelers, and the saloons never closed. For a while, Thurmond was West Virginia's symbol of raw, industrial power. Then came the slow bleed. The Depression gutted the coal industry. Highways replaced railroads, and one by one the businesses folded. By the 1950s, the once bustling depot saw only a handful of trains a day. Families left, storefronts boarded up, and silence spread across the tracks. Today, Thurmond has fewer than 5 residents. Most of the town belongs to the National Park Service, preserved as part of the New River Gorge National Park. Walking its empty streets is like standing on a movie set abandoned after filming Wrapped, a ghost town still technically alive. Amtrak still stops here, but almost no one gets on or off. Shocking detail. In 2010, the U.S. Census recorded exactly 5 people living in Thurmond, making it one of the smallest incorporated towns in America. If Thurmond clings to life on the edge of extinction, our next stop in Pennsylvania shows the opposite, a town not dying slowly, but devoured from beneath by an uncontrollable inferno. Centralia looks like any other small Pennsylvanian town, until you notice the smoke seeping from the ground. In 1962, a fire ignited in the coal seams beneath the town. That fire never went out. For more than 60 years, it has burned relentlessly, hollowing the earth beneath homes, cracking highways, and releasing toxic fumes. At the time, Centralia had about 1.100 residents. Families fought to stay, insisting the danger was exaggerated. But sinkholes opened in backyards. Carbon monoxide levels spiked, and the government finally stepped in. By the 1980s, most residents accepted buyouts. Their homes bulldozed until only empty blocks remained. Today, fewer than 10 holdouts remain, stubbornly refusing to leave the place they still call home. The town's most haunting landmark is its graffiti highway, a stretch of cracked road covered in neon spray paint, where visitors once documented their disbelief at a city erased by fire. Authorities have since buried the road under dirt to discourage tourism. But Centralia's legend is impossible to cover up. Shocking detail. Scientists estimate the underground fire could keep burning for another 250 years, making Centralia a ghost town with a literal expiration date written in flames. If Centralia shows how disaster can consume a community from below, our next stop takes us north to Alaska, where a once mighty copper empire collapsed, leaving behind an entire town frozen in industrial time. High in the Wrangell Mountains, reachable only by a long gravel road or small plain, lie the remnants of Kennicott. In the early 1900s, this remote Alaskan outpost was the beating heart of America's copper industry. Backed by the powerful Guggenheim family and J.P. Morgan, Kennicott's mines produced some of the purest copper ever discovered, ore that literally helped electrify the United States. At its peak, the company extracted more than $200 million worth of copper, over $3 billion in today's money. Life here was grueling but strangely modern for the frontier. The company built a hospital, school, skating rink, and even a tennis court. Yet the prosperity was never meant to last. When the veins ran dry in 1938, management shut everything down overnight. Families boarded the last train out, leaving dishes in cupboards, tools on workbenches, and entire homes waiting for owners who never returned. Today, Kennicott is preserved as a National Historic Landmark, its 14-story mill looming over the valley like a rust-red cathedral to capitalism's impermanence. Tourists wander through collapsing bunkhouses and peer into medical ledgers still open on dusty desks. It is both a time capsule and a cautionary tale about the boom and bust cycle written into America's DNA. Shocking detail. The mines were abandoned so suddenly that miners' shoes were left lined up neatly at their lockers, as if their owners might come back from shift at any moment. If Kennicott is a frozen empire of copper, the next town shows what happens when prosperity itself becomes poison, forcing the government to erase a community from the map. Times Beach began as a cheerful riverside retreat. Founded in the 1920s along the Merrimack River, it was marketed as an affordable getaway for working-class families from St. Louis. For decades, Children splashed in the water. Neighbors gathered for picnics. And weekends felt like a slice of small-town paradise. It was meant to be an escape from urban worries. That illusion shattered in the early 1980s. To control the town's dusty dirt roads, officials had hired a waste hauler to spray oil as a cheap fix. What no one realized was that the oil was laced with dioxin, one of the most toxic chemicals known to science. Horses and pets began dying mysteriously. Residents fell ill. The Environmental Protection Agency moved in, confirming contamination at catastrophic levels. By 1983, the government bought out the entire town and ordered a complete evacuation. Bulldozers soon leveled every building, leaving behind an eerie emptiness where a community once thrived. In its place, authorities later created Route 66 State Park, a sunny green landscape hiding the poisoned ground beneath. Visitors stroll through trails with little clue they are walking over the ghost of an obliterated town. Shocking detail. Soil tests showed dioxin concentrations up to 300 times higher than the level considered safe, making Times Beach uninhabitable forever. If Times Beach is a town erased by corporate negligence and toxic waste, the next stop in Tennessee shows another kind of secrecy, a city deliberately hidden by the U.S. government itself. In 1942, a dot on the map of Tennessee suddenly vanished. The U.S. government seized 60,000 acres of farmland and forests, fenced it off, and erased it from public records. In its place rose Oak Ridge, a city built in total secrecy to house the Manhattan Project. At its peak, more than 75,000 people lived here. Yet the outside world had no idea it existed. Workers were recruited under vague job descriptions, sworn to silence, and surrounded by barbed wire. Letters were censored, cameras were banned. Even families living inside the gates often didn't know what they were really building. Behind the curtain, Oak Ridge's giant graphite reactors churned out enriched uranium that would later power the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The city had all the trappings of suburban America: schools, churches, shops, but with one crucial difference: every aspect of life was monitored. Rumors circulated of neighbors reporting on neighbors, and of guards watching every street. To live in Oak Ridge was to exist in a Truman Show-style bubble, where the government pulled every string. Today, Oak Ridge is no longer hidden. Museums and preserved sites tell the story of its role in World War II. And tourists wander through facilities that once defined the nuclear age. Yet its nickname, the Secret City, still lingers. A reminder of how easily entire communities can be erased or concealed in plain sight. Shocking detail. Residents consumed millions of gallons of milk laced with radioactive iodine during the project, as environmental safeguards barely existed. If Oak Ridge was secrecy by design, our final stop in Ohio blurs the line between history and urban legend, a town whispered about for decades, but officially wiped from existence. Deep in the forests of Summit County lies one of America's most infamous, disappeared, communities. Officially, the town was known as Boston, Ohio, but in the 1970s, the federal government purchased the land, evicted the residents, and sealed off the area to create what would become Cuyahoga Valley National Park. Houses were boarded up, streets closed, and bulldozers moved in. The abruptness of the eviction, coupled with the sight of empty homes marked with government spray paint, gave birth to a new name whispered by locals: Helltown. Rumors spread quickly. People claimed satanic cults roamed the woods, mutant snakes slithered in the river, and school buses filled with ghosts were left to rust along the roadside. In reality, those abandoned buses and shuttered houses were the result of bureaucratic seizure, not the supernatural. Yet the myths stuck, fueled by eerie signs reading, "Road closed," and the unnerving silence of a once lived-in community turned into a no-man's land. Even today, Helltown occupies a strange place in America's imagination, a blend of fact and folklore, where government policy and ghost stories overlap. Some explorers report strange noises at night, while others simply marvel at how a real town can be swallowed so completely by both forest and myth. Shocking detail. In 1985, the government accidentally left several homes standing, boarded but untouched, for nearly a decade, feeding conspiracy theories that something more sinister was being hidden. From the fire-scorched streets of Centralia to the eerie legends of Helltown. These 10 communities prove that America's history is not just about what's built, but also about what's buried, abandoned, or erased. From the frozen saloons of Bodie to the toxic soil of Times Beach. Each of these towns tells us something larger than its own tragedy. They are the abandoned footnotes of American history, footnotes that scream when you bother to read them. Together, they sketch a shadow map of the United States, one built not on progress and prosperity but on collapse, secrecy, and loss. The pattern is unmistakable. In the West, greed for gold and copper inflated towns like balloons, only to watch them deflate in the desert winds. In the South, Cahaba proves even political capitals are no match for nature's floods. Appalachia's Thurmond shows what happens when industry moves on, leaving only 5 stubborn souls behind. And in Centralia, the very ground revolted, burning for decades while families clung to the illusion of normalcy. Other communities, like Times Beach and Oak Ridge, reveal something more chilling, that sometimes erasure is deliberate. Toxic waste made one town unlivable, nuclear secrecy turned another into a city that didn't officially exist. And then there is Helltown, where fact and rumor tangled so tightly that no one can separate bureaucratic blunder from whispered nightmare. It's proof that when government silence meets human imagination, myth fills the vacuum. What unites these places isn't just their absence of people, it's their abundance of meaning. They remind us that the American story isn't only skyscrapers and star-spangled parades. It's also fires that never go out, industries that abandon their workers, and entire towns swallowed by the mistakes of ambition. So the question lingers. If these 10 are only the ones we know, how many other hidden towns lie beneath highways, buried under lakes, or erased from maps entirely? What else has been forgotten? And who decides what gets remembered? Exploring these lost places isn't morbid nostalgia, it's a form of honesty. They force us to confront the fragility of prosperity and the permanence of consequences. They whisper the same warning, again and again. History is not just what survives, it's also what we allow to disappear. Thank you for journeying with us through the forgotten corners of America. These hidden towns, whether swallowed by fire, abandoned by industry, or erased by design, prove that history is never a straight line. For every city that thrives, another quietly disappears. At Everyday Earth, we believe the stories that vanish are just as important as the ones that make headlines. By remembering these communities, we honor the lives lived there and the lessons they leave behind. If this exploration opened your eyes to a side of America you've never seen, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Which of these lost towns surprised you most? Your insight could guide our next journey. And stay tuned, next time, we'll go even deeper, uncovering the underground cities hidden beneath modern America's bustling streets.